Hey there, fellow citizen of the internet. Welcome to the Moses Kabandana Podcast. Today, I have with me Michael Forman, and we're going to be talking about networking. Michael, welcome to the Moses Kabandana Podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so networking, that is a very giant umbrella term. I have a computer background, so this is not the kind of networking that we're talking about, right? Can you
Correct.
let us in? Can you let us into what is networking and how does the audience benefit from this?
Well, anybody can benefit, okay? But I really found that ever since the pandemic, people forgot how to network. They forgot how to communicate with one another without the use of their cell phone. The cell phone to me is the
Mm,
number one issue that stops people from networking properly. If you network properly, if you network and communicate properly, it will increase your effectiveness. Thus, it will increase your profitability.
mm. You said since the pandemic. Why do you think?
Well, it's very simple. The pandemic, everybody went inside. Everybody began Zoom calls and everything else. And they really said, you know what? I can stay with this. Let me just do this. And people are losing the human touch. Okay. So when you first go out to a networking event, let's start there.
Mm,
Let's say you go and you meet somebody, you look them in the eye, you shake their hand firmly, not like a dead fish, but like firmly, okay?
yeah.
And then you sit down with them, and here's the number one thing that you have to remember: be quiet, shut up, don't say a word, let the other person speak. People love to talk about themselves, and you just let them speak, let them talk about what they do or what they did or anything like that. Let them talk, because the more that they talk, the more barriers come down, and the easier it will be for you to communicate with them.
Mm, okay. So can you let us into the like some the pros and cons? Some of this is like very evident, self-evident, but the pros and cons of in-person connections versus remote connections on both ends, right? Like what are the benefits and what are the cons on both sides?
Okay, well, the pros on both sides is really great. Um, Obviously, the pro for networking in person is the human contact. Okay, you get to speak with the people one on one, or in a setting, if you walk up to a table of five people, you get the audience of five people. And if you just network, let's say through Zoom or something else like that, you have the ability to speak to 10 or 20 people at the same time, but
Hmm.
you lose that human touch. If one person is talking on Zoom and you're a funny guy and you can inject a little humor, you really can't on Zoom, but you can when you see them one on one. So there's a
Hmm.
very
Would
big difference, yet a small difference.
yeah, yeah. Would you say that remote connections are, let's say, like way more scalable, right? Like I can talk to hundreds of thousands of people at the same time, supposedly, let's say, but the quality of that connection is diminished. But in person is obviously not as scalable. So I cannot talk to 100,000 people at the same time unless I'm like on a whole different level. But if you are in person, the quality of that connection is deeper, is more substantial, would you say?
Yeah, when you're in person, the quality greatly increases. Okay. Now, if you're at a networking event, I don't know if it's a local networking event, a regional networking event, or it's such a big networking event that you paid to get in, and you see people from all over the country. So you can still speak to a vast amount of people. You have to figure out who it is that you want to talk to. That's one of the first things you have to do. But you can still talk with anybody and everybody. Yet on Zoom, you're limited to just to those people. When you have an in-person networking event, you don't know who you're going to run into. You can run into somebody who wasn't even going to be part of your group, yet they are part of it.
Before I go into my next one, how did you end up on this line of work, if you would?
Well, listen, I started networking 30 years ago. I've been in sales or a sales type of position all my life. So I was in the military, and I had to learn how to tell people who were older than I was, but I outranked them. Okay, so that's a very different conversation as opposed to
Yeah.
somebody who was younger than I was, me telling them what to do. But from there, I was in the mortgage industry. I was a sole proprietor. I owned pizzerias, restaurants. I was working for a law firm. I have a vast amount of experience, but one basic thing that ties everything together is networking. So I may have started 30 years ago, but 10 or 12 years ago, I started to go out and speak about it. I started to speak on stages and things like that. And it wasn't up until about a year ago when I quit my job, quit everything, and I went into this full time.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Would you say that you are a natural conversationalist?
I would say I'm a natural conversationalist.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'm an extrovert, okay? And if you compare an extrovert to an introvert, that's completely different. But I can
Yeah.
walk into
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
room and I can pick up a conversation with anybody about anything. And that's part of the rapport building when you meet with somebody, is how well you can build that rapport, have them talk about anything, or the introvert, which is a whole different set of circumstances. And I don't not suggest an introvert going out to networking events, because there is a way for an introvert to get introduced and have them start networking.
Okay. Okay. Interesting here. Can you let us into a little like the difference between hearing and listening? Let me
Oh, you
elaborate
don't have to.
a little bit. One of the things, one of the skill sets that I've still developing is the ability to listen, right? And by that I mean, like, when someone is speaking to me, I am listening so that I can answer, right? And that I'm trying to unlearn that, because instead of listening to answer, I'm listening for the sake of listening, and I find that to be very, very difficult. And so one of the things that I've put in place is that when someone is speaking to me, I try to listen and remember everything that they said, and then I can repeat what they said until to the point that I agree that what I repeated is what they said and what they meant to say. Right? That is a whole different layer of listening. So yeah, unpack that, the whole difference between hearing and listening properly.
Okay, well, first of all, you are well on your way to doing it correctly. Don't try to unlearn everything you've learned. Okay? When you hear somebody, it's like Charlie Brown in the teacher. All they hear is wah 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 wah. They can say anything they want. Okay? And you're thinking about your next question or the next thing that
Yep.
you're going to say. Okay? So forget about that. Listen. Listening is an art. Okay? And you have to listen so that you can respond to them correctly. Now, hopefully, as you're responding, you're coming up with something else, another question or something else. But there's an art to listening, and you listen to the person. And because if a person doesn't listen to me, Okay, I can tell if they're just hearing what I'm saying or if they're listening to what I can say. And then if I just think that they're hearing, that's it. I'm going to stop talking to them, all right, and I'll move on to
Yeah.
somebody else. But if I'm actually having that conversation with somebody and I'm listening, well, then that conversation will go more. And then if you have, if you've listened to a point, you've responded, and you've started to break down that the building of the rapport with that person, then you ask them for their business card. You say, hey, you know something? I like what you're doing. I like it so much. How can I be a great referral source for you? Okay. Now, I haven't told them what I do or where I came from, anything like that. What can I do for you? How can I be of service to you? And usually the response is like, what do you mean? You know,
Mm,
just
mm,
that. Okay. So you immediately broke down that wall. You've built the rapport, and if you've done your job correctly, they're going to ask you for your business card. And what do you do? Right? Now,
mm.
there's a whole thing once you get their business card, because you take their business card, you write down the date, the name of the function, and something that you spoke about. So when you get those business cards back home or back in your office, you see this business card, you go, oh, what did I talk to him about? You flip it over,
Right,
there it
right.
is.
Okay, wow. Um, okay, so I want to switch gears just a little bit and talk about public speaking because, well, you do quite a bit of it. And it is very often repeated that public speaking is like one of the biggest fears that the average individual has. So, can you break down, to some extent, I suppose, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about public speaking?
Well, when you go out and you go in front of an audience, that's a whole different concept than doing, let's say, a podcast.
Yeah.
Because you're doing a podcast, you have one on one. It's really simple. When you're going out in front of an audience, you have to learn to speak and listen to the audience as well as speak. And what I mean by that is that you have to make them a part of your conversation. You can't just get up there and talk because people are going to tune out. They're going to pick up their phones. They're going to start texting. They're going to do everything. You have to keep them involved. And if you're speaking to 10 or 20 people or 30 people, that's you speak one way. If you're speaking to an auditorium of like 200 or 300 people, you talk another way. But you still have to keep that level of interactivity. You have to keep them involved. Because if you don't keep involved, you're lost.
Yeah, yeah, wow. Well, so that's a very good segue into like in this case we're having a podcast, right? It's a one-on-one type thing, and you are coming to the table with a decade or two, maybe 3 decades of some sort of communication back and forth leadership. I've been doing this more or less frequently for the last year, even though the podcast is about 3 years old. So we have grown accustomed to coming up with topics on the spot, trying to listen attentively. But for the person that is just starting, whether they're trying to be a public speaker or a storyteller or a podcaster, what are some good tips to being a good interviewer?
Okay, to be a good interviewer, you should really you have your basic questions for everybody. You ask them how you started and everything else, just the same way that you began. Um, but you have to try to pull out a story because stories is what people listen to. Okay, they listen to stories. So tell me about what did you do that made the biggest effect on what made you what you are today, or what made that major difference? What made you say, okay, I'm going to quit my job and go into this? You know, think of something, because you have to try to pull a story from them, because stories is what people remember. They're not going to remember a podcast. They're going to remember a
Right,
story
right.
that they relate to. And if you can get something that your audience relates to, then they will come back to you often.
Okay, come. Okay, well, these are very great segues. So, the big question that I had at the very top of my page here, is throughout this podcast, I want to figure out how is it that you maintain a connection across time, right? Because the whole reason for, at least I'm guessing that you're trying to create a culture where our intent is not short term, right? You're not trying to get that person's business card so that you can get business from them and then that's it. Your intent is to maintain relationships, connections across time, and that is where the challenge comes into the equation. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if I am correct, what are some good practical tips that people can use to, like, once a connection is made, how do you maintain that across time?
Okay, well, you were spot on when you said you want to create relationships as opposed to clients. Okay, because you always look to build that relationship. And that really comes from here. Let me tell you how to follow up after you've met somebody. Okay, now you've met somebody, you've built that relationship, you've built that rapport and everything. So what are you going to do with that business card when you're finished with it? Well, you're going to go back home or back to your office, and you're going to write them a quick email. Hey, I just saw you on such and such date, such and such place. We talked about Johnny. I'm sorry that your son Johnny hurt his ankle while playing Little League Baseball. I'm sorry to hear that. Hope it gets better. I'll talk with you soon. Now, I didn't say when, a time, anything like that, because right away I'm going to write a handwritten thank you note. Okay? Yes, in today's times and everything else, you're going to write a handwritten thank you note. You're going to write, hey,
Yeah.
I'm just writing you a thank you for meeting with me at such and such place, such a date. We spoke about your son, Johnny. I hope to meet with you soon for some coffee. Okay, so here you went that slow turn to now
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking of meeting him for coffee. Then, if you don't get a response, okay, I'd say after you mail it, within 3 days, you're going to send them an email. Hey, I just wanted to touch base with you. I'm not sure if you received my card or not, but I'm looking to have coffee with you. I'm free next Tuesday or Wednesday. How's Tuesday? And let them. So after all three of these follow-ups, you're you're pretty sure that they're going to respond to you about 90% of the time. That's a very high percentage. But if you do it all correctly, they're going to, positive or negative, they're going to respond to you. Then it says, oh, that's great. I think coffee would be great. Tuesday does work for me at 3 o'clock, whatever. Then, or after you get all these business cards, you put them into your CRM, okay, your client relationship management tool. And then you have a newsletter or something else, something to keep your name in front of them all the time. Okay? So you have this client, you have this prospective client, but they receive your name, something about, and there's a way for newsletters. You don't want to write your newsletter just facts, all facts, and everything else. Okay, I was in the mortgage industry. I used to do a quarterly newsletter. It started out quarterly, then I went to monthly, and I started it out with a joke. Haha, funny. Okay, I had about 6 pieces to it. Two of them mortgage industry news. The other 4 pieces were all somebody's recipe. This happened over here. So you have to keep it light, something where they'll be interested in reading. Okay? Now, that in
Okay.
combination with your drip campaign, your email campaign, it's just all keeping everything. And then twice a year, you go from A to Z. You call every single person. Hey, I'm just checking up. How you doing? What's going on? Oh, nothing. Okay. And if you do it correctly, you do that January to June. Then June,
Okay.
you start the whole process again. So that's just a way to keep in touch with everybody. There's a lot
Hmm.
of ways where you can do it without being too intrusive.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the key there is you don't want to get kicked out of someone's email because you're being too intrusive and too annoying. And so that those are very good tips. Is there are there things that people can do? So that answer is pretty business heavy and it's pretty appropriate for this topic. What about like an interpersonal connection? I find it that cheapers. I'm dating myself here, but it's been 10 years since I've graduated high school. I feel like I'm really old now, and but I have at least 3 or 4 friends from high school that we still touch bases, right? And that is an in like on a personal connection level. So outside of the business sphere, how do you maintain medium to long term friendships with non-business people? This might be like outside of your wheelhouse, but I don't know if you want to take a stab at that.
Well, part of the follow up is that you stay connected with them. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and if you have a YouTube channel, that's even better. Okay? So every once in a while, send them an email. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Da, da, da. Oh, this happened to me. Um, I just had a baby and whatever else. Keep it all personal. And you just do that. And every once in a while, if you feel like it, pick up the phone and call them.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
great that you have all this email going on, but still, you haven't talked to them.
Okay.
But that's
Okay.
what I would do.
I have circled here stories because you touched on it earlier that people remember stories. Man, I cannot like overemphasize that, right? That's a very often overlooked nugget. Like I overlook the importance of stories all the time. But so how do you approach stories? Like in a conversation like this, right? Towards the beginning of the podcast, I thought, okay, maybe I can start by asking about his childhood and we can go on from there to where he is now and then we can go into the questions that I've asked now, right? That would grasp the attention of the listener. They're interested in you as a human being because now they know some of your story, right? But that might the person that is interested in business connections, I might lose that person in the first 5-10 minutes per se because they
You,
might think,
you,
oh my
you,
goodness, this is so
you're
yeah.
going,
How do you approach this?
well, you're going back too far. Okay? You're going
Okay.
back to childhood. Okay? You don't have to do that. You don't have to go back that far. You just say, you know what? What was the thing? What was the episode? What was the what made you begin networking? What made you say, okay, look, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to do this full time? What happened? What was that piece that I'm missing? And I would just turn around and tell you. Now, really, what my story is about 12 years ago, my wife had cancer, and we worked through it about 6 or 8 months. She went through chemo and everything else, and thank God she was okay. And I thought, you know what? She, she shouldn't outdo me. So I had a stroke. I had a stroke, and half my body was paralyzed. And you know what? I realized that there's more to offer, more that life offers than just working for somebody. Okay, and that started me on my trail where I am today. Okay, so it took that catastrophic event or events to happen to knock some sense into me. And, a friend of mine, who I'm very close with, had a kidney failure and he needed a replacement. And he didn't know where to go. He tried all the different places. And he got word from somebody's friend who had a friend in Michigan. He lives in Florida. In Michigan,
Okay.
they were going to donate, and there's some sort of swap that they do. I don't know, but he was able to get that surgery done in New York, and he says on Facebook like every week, listen, you only have a certain amount of days. You never know when it's going to end. Live life to the fullest. If you're not doing something you enjoy, stop doing it. Okay? Enjoy life. Enjoy the person you're with. And that spoke to me. That was this was about a year and a half ago. And that was very important to me.
Wow. Wow. That's yeah. Huh. So then that got you onto this path of being a very strong communicator, if I can say so myself. And communicator. What makes a good communicator in this case? I mean, you're able to capture someone's attention with not just the information that you bring forward, but how you lay out that information. And you're doing all of this on the fly. Of course, you have a lot of experience, and you said earlier that you are a natural conversationalist. But for that young girl or guy that's not necessarily a natural conversationalist, how do they become a good communicator or a half decent one at that?
Well, when you're in a networking environment, I always use humor, okay? Because I'm a pretty funny guy. Okay? But but
Yeah.
if you are not a funny person, if you're not humorous, don't do it. Don't try to put humor into the conversation because the people who are at the
Right.
table are going to know that you're forcing it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah,
and
yeah,
listen, you keep it clean. You have to really feel out the people who you're speaking with, but I always make things funny, okay? Because that's another way
yeah.
that people remember you or what you're saying or doing or anything like that. They remember. Oh, I remember him. He was that funny guy, you know, and you go on from there. So that's part of being a good communicator. But being a good communicator let's go back a little bit, all right, to the listening, okay? To communicate, you don't have to be talking, okay? So
Right,
you can
right.
listen to the person and then give back some information that they find interesting, and you're communicating now, okay? So there's many
Yeah.
different ways, but you have to find your way as a person and go with that way.
Wow. Those are some seriously good nuggets, you know. Um, and so as I'm trying to respect our time here, and as we're coming to a close, any final thoughts, final words that you'd like to leave the audience with, as far as again, one establishing connections, of course, but maintaining those connections across time.
Well, first of all, I wrote a book. Here, wait, let's see. Networking Unleashed. All right,
Yeah.
it's really a step-by-step guide on how to do everything that we were talking about. All right, you can go to my website, michaelaforman.com, and get even more. Okay, so all of this is here. But one nugget, one thing that you can really do to set yourself apart from the masses. You ready?
Yep.
Send the handwritten note. Send it, okay? Because when was the last time you received a handwritten thank you note. Okay, so now
Yeah.
that's one. Yeah, no, and it they will remember you like like, oh, I remember him. Oh, that's right. Oh, I'm going to get to know him. Now, I did a
Right.
podcast last week with somebody,
Mm.
and he wrote here. I'm going to show you this. See a thank you note?
Ah.
I
Yeah.
received
Yeah.
the thank you note, and
Mm-mm.
he said, he goes, that was probably the most important thing that I picked up, and he's going to do it from this point
Wow.
on. So now I've
Wow.
been doing it rather steadily for about 20 years. Okay,
Oh.
so
Okay. Okay.
it's second nature to me. But for
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
just starting out, just gathering those business cards, follow up with that thank you note.
Hmm. A handwritten note. My goodness.
Yes.
I might have to try that, even though I haven't handwritten anything in so long that my calligraphy is basically trash. So,
Yeah. Listen,
oh my
I keep
goodness.
a package, I keep a package of about 50 in my briefcase at all times.
Okay, okay, yeah, I highlighted it, circled it, and everything. Hey, these are some seriously good nuggets. Where can people find you if they wanna learn more about you?
They can find me right at my website, Michael michaelaforman.com. On there is a small contact sheet, and you just put in what you're interested in. Send it to me. I will call you back within 24 hours. And you can really, my website, all the different podcasts that I was on, the different talks or speaking that I do. Um, there's a link for the book. Everything you need, one stop shop.
Mm. Michael, thank you so much for coming to the Moses Kabandana podcast. It's been a pleasure having you here. I'm gonna start to work on this whole handwriting, handwritten note thing.
And if you want, send me an email in a week or two, and just tell me how you are doing with the thank you notes, with the building the rapport, with the follow up, with everything else like that. It's Michael at michaelaforman.com. Okay? Send me a quick email. Just let me know how you did.
Will do. Will do. Thank you so much for coming and a happy Monday to you.
Very good. Thank you.